Welcome back. Town Hall debacle. Former President Donald Trump sat down with CNN's Kaitlan for the first presidential town hall of the 2024 election cycle. The town hall, which took place in New Hampshire, marked the former president's first time on CNN in over 6 years, and the night was filled with insults, claims, the president's many investigations, his policy proposals, and more. We'll take a look at how this impacts Trump's candidacy, how this shakes up the 2024 GOP nomination field, and what we should expect next. Plus, 50 episodes strong. We here at the Ishaan S Show are celebrating 50 amazing episodes of the Ishaan S Show, marking one of our biggest milestones here, in addition to our 2-year anniversary. We'll celebrate today as we look back at the 2 years and 50 episodes that we've made here at the Ishaan S Show. We'll be taking a look at those stories and more today, May 12th, 2023. From Ishaan Media, this is a special edition of the Ishaan S Show. 50 episodes strong. With me, your host, Ishaan. Hello, and welcome back to the Ishaan S Show for the 50th time today. I am so proud to be here today to mark our 50th episode. You know, it doesn't sound like a big deal to some, but really for me, running this show, this is one of the proudest moments that I've experienced in the entire duration of this show, because we're also celebrating 2 amazing years today on May 12th. That's why I purposely decided to record today on May 12th, because that marks 2 years since we released the trailer for this show. And I know people say that the anniversary should be when the first episode came out, but really for me, the anniversary is celebrating putting this out there. You know, it takes a lot of effort to make a trailer and then put it out, because that's the first step when you're making a podcast or when you're making a show or when you're doing anything. When you put out the first piece of that project, that's when you know this is a real thing. And so all those, 2 years ago, I posted the trailer. I mustered up a lot of courage and I said, you know what, I'll do this. And I went inside the closet and I recorded a trailer for the acoustics and whatnot. We didn't have a studio back then, but I went in and I recorded this trailer. And there I said, if you want to sound super informed about politics, you come to the Ishaan S Show. And I'm very happy to report that for the past 2 years and for the last 50 episodes, I'm really nervous. I'm going to mix up those numbers, 50 years and 2 episodes. But for these past 2 years, we have been trying tirelessly to deliver you objective, fair analysis of the news. And that's where I think we really shine. But of course, this journey and this amazing part of the show we're at right now would have never been possible without your support. People don't understand what it means to me to know that there are people who care enough to take out the time to listen to what I have to say on my show, that listen to the things I wanted to share with the world. It's humbling. And when I can see the numbers go up for certain episodes, when I see the numbers going up in general, it makes me feel so good, and it makes me feel like there are people out there that care about politics, that want to know how they're being governed, and that want to have a say in how they're governed. This podcast has allowed me to exercise that fundamental right. And this is something I said in the first episode, and it's something that I've held to myself forever in all 50 of these episodes, which is that, we live in a country, we're lucky to live in this country, but we live in a country where our politics is really about people. It's not about, big parties. It's not about other interests. The interest is always derived by the people, and that's because we have the ability to vote. Our vote is what allows us to be who we are as a country. We are a bastion for democracy. And I'm so proud to be a part of that in any little way that I can. And this show we've had on, I can't remember exactly how many at this time, but we've had on 10 amazing guests. We've had on politicians. We've had on people from other news avenues. We have had newsmakers. We have also talked about some of the most divisive topics of our time. We've talked about the 2022 midterms. That was what this entire show was dedicated to for our first year and a half. But the 2022 midterms, we talked about the Roe v. Wade decision being overturned. We've talked about mass shootings. We've talked about politics. We've talked about the careers of people. We've watched careers from this show. That's what happens as time goes on. You know, when you age with a show, you really allow it to grow into you. And that's what I think has happened with this show and me. I've allowed it to become a bit of me. And I enjoy that, and I'm really grateful that I am lucky enough to have an avenue like this, that I am passionate about something to the extent where I made a podcast. Most people said, Ishaan, we believe in you at the beginning. Personally, and many people know this, I was not very confident about this show. In fact, the first season when it ended, I didn't actually think I would come back. But I did after the encouragement of a lot of people, and I kept coming back for season 3. And it goes to show the support that you guys have given me. Running something like this for 2 years, for 50 episodes, managing a website, trying to do social media, trying to manage a schedule, it's not worth it unless there are people on the other side. Otherwise, it's just me talking to a microphone. I might be in a studio and I might be just talking to a microphone and a computer screen, but on the other side of it is you guys that listen to this show, that care enough about politics to come and listen to what I have to say. And that's what has allowed this show to succeed. And so from the bottom of my heart to each listener today, in the past, and in the future, thank you. Thank you for everything. It means the world to me. Now, celebrating 50 years, celebrating 50 episodes on the Ishaan S Show, we are going to look back at all of our amazing stories in every way we can, with our top story for this week, which is Donald Trump's town hall on CNN. Yeah, that happened. It's an interesting thing, and we're gonna try to spice things up. We're gonna look back at the Ishaan S Show through this town hall, because this town hall touched a lot of topics that we've covered here on the show, really. So let's look back at it. So last week, CNN announced that they were going to be holding a town hall featuring former President Donald Trump, and this would mark the first time that the former president had been on the network in over 6 years, which is a pretty big deal because, as we know, Donald Trump did not have the best relationship with CNN while he was president, but for his third bid of the White House, he had decided that he would be on the network for a special town hall. Now, for my friends who don't know what a town hall is, it's not like the Clash of Clans town hall. A town hall is a style of meeting. It's used a lot in politics. It's a style of meeting where the top guy might be on stage and everybody in the audience gets to ask questions of whoever your speaker is. So in this case, CNN picked Republican voters and unaffiliated or non-committed voters and Republican voters to the audience to ask former President Donald Trump questions about his positions on some of the biggest issues. But it was moderated by CNN's Kaitlan Collins. Now, Kaitlan Collins, I respect her as a journalist very much. I've watched her career for so long, and I really admire her work. Now, she got to be the moderator for this. She was the former CNN chief White House correspondent, or maybe she's still White House correspondent. I can't remember, but I do know that she definitely was White House correspondent during the Trump administration, and she and Trump did not have the closest, warmest of relations. Like at some one point, Donald Trump literally barred her from going to a press conference. Um, so, Donald Trump's classic relationship with the media. But he did agree to sit down for this. So let's look back at some of the biggest topics that were discussed. So the biggest thing that I felt anyway, which garnered the most discussion of the evening, was about the 2020 election, about the January 6th riot. When you think about it, this election, 2024 presidential election, is literally just going to be about the 2020 election. And if, we're lucky or unlucky enough, depends on what your views are, to have a rematch against Biden and Trump, it's going to be really negative. But if we end up with that rematch, I have a feeling that it's just going to be both candidates turning the page back and looking back at their grievances from 4 years ago. And that's because Donald Trump has still not accepted the results of the 2020 election. And I'm going to say something here that shouldn't be a political statement and should be generally accepted fact, which is that there was no widespread voter fraud that influenced the results of the 2020 election. It's not been proven. It's been rejected by over 60 courts, many of them being Republican judges appointed by Donald Trump himself. Some Trump-appointed judges have also rejected this claim. So you can be on whatever side you want. You can continue listening to this episode with your hard-set belief, but just know that I'm going to be reporting this based on the fact that there was no widespread voter fraud. It's been proven in court time and again. But Donald Trump does not accept this fact, and to him, the election was rigged. And he's been, even in that town hall, within the first few seconds of the town hall of him being asked a question, he made it about the election. So first, I think he was asked about the January 6th riot. So with the January 6th riot, he said that he described it as being beautiful, a day. He described the events as he touted the audience that was there to listen to him before, they went to the Capitol. And of course, we all know, as we covered here on the show, on multiple occasions actually, how the January 6th riot was not just, a walk in the park. It was a riot. And people were trespassing onto the Capitol grounds. People were attacking the Capitol. People were attacking Capitol Police. The lives of the vice president, of the speaker, of so many members of Congress were put at risk. But for Donald Trump, he was looking more at at his own supporters. He did denounce, for the record, the people that went out of control on that day, but he was not ready to admit that many of them were his supporters. But when he was asked whether he would pardon people that were marching on that were rioting on January 6th, he said that he would actually give it a real consideration. Like, he said, no, this is a serious thought I'm having to pardon all these people for their involvement in the January 6th riot. And he said he wouldn't pardon everybody, but he said that the vast majority of people, he was thinking about it. He said he would not. He wouldn't rule it out. And that just plays into the same narrative that he's been touting about them being political prisoners of sort. He definitely does believe to some extent that the election was stolen. And he believes that the people that have been arrested in relation to the January 6th riot are also political prisoners. He very well might not even believe that, too. It's anyone's guess what goes on in his mind. But he said that he would not take it off the table to pardon a lot of these people. And when talking about the vice president of at the time, Mike Pence, he said he did not think he put Mike Pence in danger that day. When in fact he did tweet on multiple occasions, Mike Pence has a responsibility to overturn the election, which he legally couldn't. And beyond that, he also was talking about how on multiple occasions, or he wasn't talking about it at the town hall, but on multiple occasions, he actually did sympathize with people that were shouting the "Hang Mike Pence" thing of that day. He did not denounce it, and he says that he was not putting the vice president in danger, and that he wasn't putting Capitol Police officers in danger. And actually, what he did, a nice stunt, if you will, he had a printout of his previous tweets in his pocket in his suit. So he took that out and he showed Kaitlan Collins and read his tweets to her and the audience. He read the tweets. He said that I was not putting anybody in danger, and he then again proceeded to blame Mike Pence for not fulfilling the duty that he wanted to. He said, quote, no, or rather, when Kaitlan Collins asked if Trump had put Mike Pence in danger, he said, quote, no, because he did something wrong. He should have put the votes back to the state legislature. He wrongly insisted that Pence had the legal authority to somehow reject the votes of the states. So much of the discussion of the evening actually revolved around the 2020 election. It revolved around the January 6th riot, whether or not Trump was ready to accept that he lost. Kaitlan Collins on multiple occasions even asked the president on the stage, she said, Mr. President, are you going to denounce the January 6th riot? Mr. President, are you going to accept the results of the 2020 election? Trump still says no. And that's probably the biggest takeaway from that night, which, because it was such a big part of the discussion, it was really going to be about that. But beyond that, he also then talked about the Ukraine and Russian invasion of Ukraine. That's something we've covered here on the show. I remember covering it last year as well, as soon as it happened. And then the response that the West had, that we had here, and I remember covering that story. It was really surreal at the time, and it still is. And I encouraged people then, and I encourage people now. You can donate to refugee organizations. You can donate to help Ukraine, because we here at the Ishaan S Show do stand with Ukraine. We stand for democracy. But anyway, that's besides the point. Looking back, we did cover this. We covered the facts of this story. But so when Trump was asked about the Russian invasion of Ukraine, he was asked by one of the members of the audience about it. Consistently, there was talk about whether, and this has been a talking point for Republicans for a while. Some Republicans have suggested that maybe we shouldn't be giving any aid. Some have said no aid, but many have been saying we shouldn't be giving so much aid to Ukraine at this time. Even though right now, Ukraine is really fighting for its life. Like, they're doing a pretty good job of pushing back Russia, but they need support. This has been reported by multiple agencies, multiple networks as well. The reporting shows that our weapons are helping. Donald Trump did not deny that, and he actually did say that he would want to see the killing to end. He wanted that to happen, but he did put a lot of the blame on Europe. And as many of us might know from the Trump administration, a foreign policy strategy of the Trump administration was to point at Europe. It was to point at Europe, and it was to suggest that Europe was not playing a full part. And so even at this town hall, he went after Europe, and he said that Europe is not paying the same amount that we are, that we're paying $180 billion, they're paying $20 billion. So he said that Europe needs to be more involved in the Ukrainian invasion. Asked whether he thought that Vladimir Putin was right about the decision, I can't remember exactly what, but he was asked about Putin. And Trump very many times said that he felt that Putin did not make the right decision invading Ukraine, but then also asserted that Putin would not be invading in the first place if he was president, um, which is not wrong necessarily. I mean, Putin never actually showed any indication of wanting to invade Ukraine while Trump was president. I mean, it was always talked about, but it never happened the way it happened after he left. That's what Trump was trying to suggest, and maybe to some extent that is true, but the fact remains that Putin invaded, but according to Trump, it was a poor decision. And it was a poor decision in that he felt like there would be retaliation, that Russia may lose. But when he was asked whether or not he wanted to see a winner, he said, quote, I don't think in terms of winning and losing. I think in terms of getting it settled so we stop killing all these people. So when he was at this town hall, Trump really wanted to make his priority about people dying in the war. And that's a noble way of trying to set himself up. He wants to be a peacemaker. He also wanted to assert himself as, the strong guy that stood up to Russia. But in terms of Ukraine, Trump was very many times suggesting that Putin made a mistake, but that also we shouldn't be giving as much to Ukraine, that we should try to settle it out. And actually, Trump also made a very bold claim that if he is to be elected, he would end the conflict in 24 hours, which, maybe is a little extra ambitious. Another topic of discussion that was really dominating was the discussion about the Roe v. Wade overturning, the Dobbs decision. This was brought up by another audience member. Now, this is interesting because Donald Trump, before Roe v. Wade was overturned, very much wanted it to be overturned, but then he also wanted it to be left to the states. Now, this is important because a lot of states, of course, are enacting those abortion bans, but now many groups that spent 50 years supporting Roe v. Wade being overturned, now these groups want a federal abortion ban, that maybe it shouldn't be a constitutionally protected right to get an abortion, but we should also have the federal government restricting abortion. Donald Trump actually has not been that much in favor of it in the past. He said that he would rather have all the states decide it individually rather than have a nationally prevailing policy of abortion being protected. Now, that's the town hall was an interesting shift in that viewpoint. Donald Trump did concede, though, that it was his viewpoint that there should be exceptions for abortion, such as when the life of the mother is at risk or rape and incest. But in general, Trump was trying to stay out of it. He did not want to take a concrete position. Asked multiple times by Collins, I think I counted like 4 times, she would say, what's your view on abortion? What do you think we should do? Would you sign a federal abortion ban? Donald Trump would not give a coherent, consistent answer. He kept saying, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to decide and negotiate to try to get something so that everybody's happy, which, is a very diplomatic way of saying, I don't know. But he wouldn't talk about what he would do as president. And when he was asked if he would sign a federal abortion ban, which other Republican candidates have said they would support, and many Republicans in Congress have been pushing for, he would not answer a concrete view. And he would also not announce a cutoff date or anything of substance. It was generally vague on federal abortion policy. Instead, he kept touting the fact that he made such a big part in Roe v. Wade being overturned because, to his credit, he did appoint 3 conservative justices who undoubtedly made this possible. And you cannot deny the fact, because if it wasn't for these 3 justices that Trump appointed, Roe v. Wade would not be overturned. I don't think it would be. I don't think it would have made it to the Supreme Court's docket. But Trump said about abortion, quote, we now have a great negotiating ability, and I think we're going to get something done. So that was Trump's view on abortion. Then later into the evening, he was asked about immigration policy. immigration policy because this was in relation to Title 42 being repealed. This happened last night, actually, at midnight. Title 42, for my friends who don't know, is a Trump-era policy that was issued after the COVID-19 pandemic began. It was for the southern border. Basically, it restricted immigration at the southern border in the name of the COVID-19 pandemic. And now that the pandemic's restrictions are being lifted and we're not necessarily in that same state of emergency, Title 42 is also being lifted. And many Republicans have been crying about this, or not crying, have been very outraged by the fact that Title 42 is being lifted, in addition to the many many COVID-related restrictions that are also being lifted that they personally advocated for. Title 42 is one of the casualties in their war, I guess. But there is concern because, as we've reported on here on the show, there has been a lot of illegal immigration as well as just general immigration from the southern border. Millions of people over the past 2 years under the Biden administration, which, is something that needs to be thought about. Not that I'm taking a position or anything. It's a big number. And anytime you have a big number, you really need to sit down and give it a thought. And so Republicans have been trying to express their concern over how people are coming over a little more unrestricted than maybe other places. And Trump said 129 countries, nationals from 129 countries were coming in. So the zero tolerance policy within Title 42 really captured the extent to which the Trump administration wanted to deter migrants from coming to the United States. But Trump said that he kind of liked the policy. He was kind of using the reasoning of infectious disease being the reason that it should be kept, which, I mean, as a political observer, I'll call it ironic. But he suggested that we need to keep migrants out of the southern border. How he said he would address that, he said he would want to reintroduce a zero-tolerance policy. He would want to keep family separation in place. Family separation was something that was pretty big publicized under the Trump administration. It was the practice of literally separating families at the border while they were being processed. Trump really was not very vocal about his policy back when he was president, but during the town hall, he was very adamant about the fact that the separation of families was something that could deter migrants from coming because they don't want their families to be separated. But in addition to that, so there was a lot of talk about immigration that night too. All right, so that was the talk about all of what happened in that town hall. Things got personal too, because in the very end, when we got back to the talk of the election fraud and about the election and classified documents. Oh, classified documents also came up. We know about what happened with classified documents with, if you think back to our episode called Classified Concerns, Trump's house was raided in Mar-a-Lago. Trump's house in Mar-a-Lago was raided by the FBI in connection to his possession of classified documents, which he claimed were declassified, but really they weren't. And he was subpoenaed to submit those documents, but he didn't. And that's why the FBI then went and raided his home. He keeps calling it, politically motivated. In reality, Mike Pence, Joe Biden, among other officials, they turned in their documents once they were asked. Trump did not. But there was also talk of that. But things got personal that night as well, as Trump then called Kaitlan Collins nasty, and then was generally his normal self on stage, his more combative self on stage. So it was an eventful night. And if you really want to learn more about what this election is going to be about, how it's taking shape, I'd suggest you find a way to watch this town hall, because this is really worth watching. I had a nice time watching it, not for any particular reason, just the fact that, political nerds like me like watching that stuff. But it's fun, and I'm really excited because this just shows how things are going to be really spiced up. And next, in the next few months, we're also going to be talking about Republican debates. We're going to be talking about other events in the news. So we're getting full swing into 2024, and we're really hitting into the Republican nomination. We'll continue to report on what's going on. Stay with us here at the Ishaan S Show. But before we go, once again, I would like to thank every listener, the thousands of listeners that we've had in our show's 2-year duration. I want to thank each of you from the bottom of my heart, because really, and I mean really, we would not be here without you. So thank you so much for everything that you've done for this show. Thank you for everything that you continue to do for this show. Thank you for being such amazing patrons. We really couldn't have done it without you. We'll see you next week. And so that does it for us here today at the Ishaan S Show. If you liked my commentary, then go ahead and follow at Ishaan S Show on Twitter and at the Ishaan S Show on Instagram for breaking news posts and updates about the show. If you want to learn more about political stories, then check out my political news blog on the IshaanSshow.com and enter in your email to subscribe, and just check out the IshaanSshow.com. And do us a favor and share this episode and all other Ishaan S Show content with your friends and family. It is the best way for this show to grow and get more people listening to it, and it helps out so much. Thanks again for all your support, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.